interviews are incredibly important for news releases because every good written news release has a good quote. And if you're going to have somebody talking on video for your clips, it's especially important that you get a good interview. And with video, there are added challenges. So the big thing is have your gear ready. Have it ready to go when you have that person talking. That way you just whoop, press the record button, and then when you're done, whoop, press the record button again to turn it off. This takes me to our rule, not our first rule, but a really important rule, that the story is more important than the equipment. If you have a really fancy camera and you're like, oh wow, this camera is awesome, and I see people do this all the time. People who are kind of younger, I think, or students or something, they have really fancy cameras, and then they want to interview somebody, and they're like, oh wait, hold on, I can't figure this, and they get flustered, and the person being interviewed feels that. You don't want that. So make sure you understand your equipment, that it's ready to go, and you pretty much got it ready to go when the person stands there and starts talking. And then you're gonna prepare that person for the interview. If you have a microphone, you're gonna hold it up for that person. Don't let the person hold their own microphone. It's always really awkward. It's it's like karaoke without the singing. You don't want people to do that. And this is what I tell people every single time, and they get it. I tell them, obviously, don't look at the camera at all. Look at me the whole time. Ignore the camera. And they get that part. And then I say, I'm going to be looking at you. I'm sorry, you're going to be looking at me when we talk. And it's going to be that kind of conversation. But me, I'm going to be looking at you through this lens. So it's going to look like I'm more interested in the camera. Don't look at the camera. Keep on looking at me. And then I have them say and spell their entire name. That way you get the correct spelling. And for broadcast news, people in broadcast news want to know how it's pronounced. So that's always really important. If this person is part of your organization, you want to go over your message. So for Anne, for example, her message is obviously time, date, location of the Yappy Hour event. Excuse me. And her other message is walking your dog is good for the humans. And the third message, or the second part to that second message, is walking his dog is good for the dog. So you want to get that. You want them to know exactly what they're going to say. If you're interviewing someone right off the cuff, if you're doing PR for a trade show and you see someone who just learned something new, you want to interview that person, kind of build them up and kind of let them know more or less what you're going to ask them, and then do this. When you ask for a quote, or when you're asking questions as part of the interview, you're going to do this. You're going to use 2 words that you always want to use, that's going to get you a colorful quote. Those 2 words are tell me. So can you tell me why you want to get people and dogs walking together in a social environment? What that does is it lets someone kind of explain, give their story in a full idea. If you ask a yes or no question, you're going to get a yes or a no, and that's not something that is quotable. And if you ask a question with 5 different parts to it, that person is going to ignore some of those parts or get confused, or if they're really good, they're just going to answer the part of the question that they want to answer. And I'm going to go into visuals real quick. Excuse me. If you can see Anne right here is, if you do photography, if you learn photography, you learn the rule of thirds, where you make kind of a tic-tac-toe lines on the visuals, and her eyes would be on the top left intersection from the tic-tac-toe, and she is looking to her left, and to her left is space for her eyes. If she was looking to her right, and this was kind of cut off, this little space right here, it would look really constricting, and that's not something that you want. Additionally, I'm using a monopod so it moves a little bit, but additionally, I have some space between her chin and the bottom of the frame, right where this black bar shows up, because if a TV news station wants to add a title card, they can do that, and they have that space. I'm not in any of these clips. I'm not going to add a title card because a TV news station might want to add it. We're going to add the names in the description. And when we're talking, I'm going to have my eye out for what's going on behind her. Obviously, there's some branches that could be sticking out of her head, but it's kind of a big bush. I kind of ran that risk a little bit, but it's a decent background. It's not really too distracting. It shows the town, and I'm also keeping an ear out. You're going to hear some wind noise, and I shot this with an iPhone, so that's fine. It's acceptable. It's not the best quality. It goes to that rule. It doesn't have to be perfect. And have a quick listen.
Get the dogs outside and have them exercise and learn to be with other dogs.
So you can hear, someone honking, a little bit of traffic. You can hear the wind, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. And you know what? That kind of gives it texture also. You see shows like Modern Family that are kind of like mockumentaries, they call them. Those actually, they'll shake the camera a little bit. They'll have some extra background noise that you wouldn't have seen in a sitcom in the 90s. So that is an acceptable style. But sometimes, this is kind of listen to what goes on here.
And it's a lot healthier to be outside than to be inside all the time.
So those are church bells, and I let her finish her quote. I didn't interrupt her, but because I know the church bells aren't going to go on forever. Most of the time. Sometimes they do. During funerals, they have them go off for like 20 minutes. But listen. Thank you. I'm going to ask you the same question in a little bit, just because the bells started ringing.
Okay.
So if you could just hold up for a second. I just let her know, thank you for the answer. It was a good answer. I'm going to ask you the exact same question because it's something that was out of my control. So you can ask people to repeat their question, and people are okay with it. And the thing about interviews, do a million of them. Do them all the time. You'll get better at them. You'll see that you forget something. You'll forget something visual or some sound, or you'll forget to even turn on your microphone if you have a microphone. And make those mistakes early and make those mistakes often, as they say. But get a lot of practice. It's a skill. Interviewing is a really good skill, and you should be good at it.